From ACTRA Toronto, I'm David Gale, and this is ACTRA Spotlight, where we're building the Canadian star system one podcast at a time. Bilal Baig and Fab Filippo's lives could not be more different, yet these actor, writer, producers magically found creative common ground and developed a TV series about a queer, non-binary South Asian Muslim, and it was picked up by CBC and HBO Max. Now, how did that happen? Stick around and hear from the stars themselves. Sort of is a groundbreaking new CBC and HBO original series that will make queerstory by becoming one of the first TV series in North America to have a non-binary lead character, not to mention the first Canadian primetime TV show to cast a queer, trans feminine, South Asian and Muslim performer in a lead role. And we are so lucky to have today the co-creators of Sort of, ACTRA Toronto members, Bilal Baig, who co-created, is executive produced, co-wrote and stars as Sabi in the show, and Fab Filippo Fab, who co-created, executive produced, and co-wrote the show. Here they are. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Congrats on Sort of. And it's set to premiere October 5th on CBC Gem and broadcast on CBC TV beginning November 9th, which is, just around the corner. And you've just returned from the world premiere in France. Like, what was that like?
It was kind of magical. Like the French, I think, are very passionate people, and if they don't like something, they don't have to say anything. And one of the things that I was so moved by was people, even in our communication gap, because I'm a bad Canadian. I don't totally speak French and I understand very little of it, but they would come up to me and try to express how much the show meant to them in kind of broken English. And often they were touching their heart, which I have to believe meant that it was, like an emotional experience or something that at least reached their heart. So I thought that was really lovely. And yeah, a real I was there with the audience when the first episode started playing, and I kept thinking about the humor, and I was like, is it not going to land? Like, is it going to translate or not totally? And the fact that they started laughing at the end of the first scene, which again, it's not straight comedy. It's there's a nuance there in kind of what we're poking fun at, and that they were able to pick that up. I was like, okay, I can breathe a little bit. I think this story might really land with these folks, and it did. And so it was nice to be showered with love, and it was beautiful too. And the festival was great, good energy. Series Mania it was younger than I thought too. Like, lots of the festival staff folks were like late 20s, early 30s, and so there was a kind of energy to the festival that was really charming.
Yeah. How many episodes did you air?
4, the first 4.
Oh, that is great. And for them to touch their hearts and laugh at your work, like, that's what a great feeling it must have been for you to just had you seen it with a group of people before?
No. And I had never seen it that big either. It was on a very big screen, and seeing my face that large was also the first time.
It's quite something. Fab, what was the experience like for you?
Well, the morning of, I couldn't leave the same country that my son was in, and I ended up not going. Nothing bad happened. It was just like this bodily kind of experience of being like, the world is a powder keg. I like, anything could happen that makes me not come back. And it didn't seem to bother me early on. But then the morning of, I kind of freaked out. And so I was like, I can't go. And so Bilal and I had a conversation, and Bilal was like, I'm still going. And I was like, yes, you should go. And so And there's something kind of right about that. I don't know. There was something really wonderful. I mean, I really regret that I couldn't be there to experience it for sure. But like seeing it via Twitter feeds and watching Bilal represent the show and like getting Bilal's texts about like, oh my God, they laughed, you know, it was quite amazing and really wonderful and actually really good that I stayed back because, you know, there was a lot of writing also that we had to do. And so I took a chunk of the writing while they were away doing that and then was able to sort of pass it to them when they got back.
So like writing for the next season?
Well, we don't have a green light for the second season, but we're sort of prepping for it and, you know, making our kind of decisions about where we'd like to go, you know,
right?
So that way we can hit the ground running.
So Bilal, did you kind of feel left at the altar with him?
Well, I mean, no, I mean, it made so much sense when we were chatting in the morning. Like, you know, one of the things I said too is I don't have a child, and for me, like to go away and come back, it wouldn't affect my life in huge ways. And not to say that I'm being unsafe around COVID stuff, but there's just, I don't know, I just felt like I just totally get prioritizing family. And Fab also spoke about Fab's kid also spending a lot of time with the grandparents. And so there's lots of very valid reasons to not go. And so, yeah, I think it was okay.
And you had a great time.
Yes, and then that was also lovely too. Like the people there were so generous. Like the festival staff folks were really interested in making sure I felt good. And then I think also we did a panel where Fab and Jennifer Quadra, co-owner of Sienna Films, was there, and so I felt that kind of connection. Like even though we weren't physically together, it was nice to see their faces and be in conversation, even though we were across the world or whatever.
True, and that's one of the things about Zoom and you know, the times that we're in. We can still be together, and people are used to that, being, you know, together from like at all parts. Like even for we had people who were on our ACTRA Awards jury this year who were in London, England, and that hasn't happened in the past because they had to be in the same room. So we're really feeling the benefits of that. So Bilal, you describe yourself as a queer, trans, feminine, Muslim playwright, performer, and workshop facilitator. Fab, how do you describe yourself?
Curveball.
Oh wow, this is really interesting. It's funny. I mean, of all people, David, we've known each other since the beginning of my career. I know that, you know, and you know, we know each other from Buddies in Bad Times days before it was in the New Face, you know, when it was on St. George.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's a really interesting question because, you know, how I've defined myself has been, I've never really questioned it or thought of it or had to, you know, necessarily, because it was sort of where my career took me. You know, I was a kid when I met Daniel McIver and Ken McDougall, you know, the two people who would
queer theater artists.
Yeah, two queer theater artists. And I was a kid from the suburbs who at the time thought every queer man just wanted to rape straight kids. Like that was the, you know, I know it's an awful thing to say, but we thought that, you know, like we thought they were sex offenders. You know, that was what my, you know, school was teaching me, my church, you know, those kinds of things, you know. So my world really opened up when I met Ken and Daniel, and, you know, the queer world became symbolized for me as a place that meant literature and art and being free to be who you are. And my entrance into that world was two people who allowed me to ask questions like, so you're like gay, does that mean you want to be a girl? Like, you know, like things like that, like even back then, you know? So my identity as someone who's cis, you know, I consider myself cis male playwright, writer, director, and performer too. You know, but my cisness and my maleness have been sort of informed by these sort of early experiences that made me understand made me able to see at least something that maybe other people who had my lens were not able to see, you know, at such a young age.
Yeah. And then you've carried that with you through your career. And the whole reason that I even asked that is because, you know, you are the co-creators, the two of you are co-creators of this show. And it's clearly focused on Bilal's background and history. And so how did the union come of the two of you to make this together?
Bilal and I were both acting in a play at the Tarragon Theater called Theory. And we were both not the leads. And so we had some time backstage during the show. And we would connect over the fact that whenever we were backstage in the dressing room, our laptops were open and we were writing on our own projects. I was the elder in the cast, and at first I was just, first of all, I was sort of taken by the fact that Bilal had a kind of self-possessed quality that was, what's the word? You know, I thought it's probably not the easiest thing for this person to walk into rooms and show themselves to people. And yet the way they did it, I was just like, you seem completely self-possessed is the word, you know? And then as we started to talk more, their lens became sort of more apparent to me. And as things happened during the show and we dealt with things and sort of creative things, all that kind of stuff, I kind of felt like we had this connection, you know, and then we started sort of naturally kind of, I think, pitching ideas to each other, or even just saying, hey, like, would you be interested in writing together? Or even just seeing if we wanted to write together. So the first idea that we had together was maybe Bilal would act in it and maybe not. Like that was the thing. We started to build this other thing. And then, so the play ends. And then we decide we're going to get together every once in a while and throw some ideas back and forth. And this idea, this notion that we're going to build a show around Bilal and Bilal, their alter ego, the notion of something that's loosely based on their life. They were a nanny before, you know, they actually did nanny. And so then, yeah. And so then I think I brought that idea to Bilal, and Bilal said, well, I like that, but why you? Why should I make this show with you? And that was really an interesting, challenging question. And I, at the time, was in the middle of a separation that was really heart-wrenching and was kind of forcing me to define elements of myself, you know. And I brought back this notion to Bilal that, what if we made a show that was like incredibly intersectional, and it shows ultimately that we are all in transition, every one of us. Although all transitions are not seen equally in society, all transitions are not accepted equally. Having said that, you know, that was the overall theme that we were looking at. And Bilal said, oh, that's interesting. So if I'm subby in the show, actually, I first asked Bilal if we could call the character Bilal, and then Bilal was like, no. And so then, and then after that, Bilal said, who are you? You have to be somebody in the show. And that's when the dad character came in. And then as soon as we came up with that, the story ideas just fell out of the sky.
That's great. Because
Yeah.
that doesn't always happen. What was your history with television at that point, Bilal?
Non-existent. I had done one very small short film um, that I won't comment on that, but that was that, and like some acting for camera classes. But yes, so the actual act of creating a TV show or even auditioning for TV was like all pretty foreign.
You didn't have to audition for this though. He didn't make.
No, no, thankfully, that's good. That's good that I didn't have to do that. I probably would have blew it anyways because I'm not very good at auditioning. So
It's, it's a practice, really. Some people are expert at auditioning and don't necessarily get the gig. So you got the gig, which is the best aspect of auditioning is getting the gig. So you found a common theme that ran through both of your lives, because you write about what you write about this, and that was that idea, that the transitions idea, and you found a voice for yourself, as you said, Fab, the voice for yourself through the dad, and Bilal, your voice is clearly your voice through the character that you're playing, Sabi. So what about the other characters? How did they, the cast is great. I actually got to see a couple of advanced screenings, and it was fantastic. And so how did the other characters come about in the creation of it?
well, I think one of the things that felt so great and kind of just dreaming of what this world could be was Fab and I just kind of swapping life stories and seeing what's funny or what could kind of make for interesting television. And so again, it feels like a handful of these characters were just extensions of maybe people in our lives, or smashing combinations of people to kind of find like a personality that would be really dynamic in contrast to Sebi or the other characters. And so again, like drawing from personal life stuff, but then it was great to have each other to add things on or take things away to then ultimately create new people. And then when we had the experience of being in the writer's room, I think that really then kind of solidified who each of these characters were and what they kind of represent in the story, and the different relationships between like Sebi in relationship to each of those characters.
Yeah, really expanded in the writing room. I have to mention, Ian Iqbal Rashid and Jen Engels and Nilu Handa, who were with us in the first season. It's a special time in a series, because you're creating the groundwork, you're defining people, and characters, and you're throwing like a ton of spaghetti against the wall, and we did it all in pandemic. So we never in the same room. I literally met one of our writers 2 days ago in person for the first time.
Wow.
Yes.
And you shot this in 2020. You shot this in 2020. So you did all the writing,
yes.
writing and shooting in 2020?
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
yeah, so it was, everyone did an amazing job, and it really just, it blossomed like one of those time-lapse, roses that, with everybody involved. It was a great team.
And you have a couple of, you have Gracelyn Kung, who plays Bessie, the mom. She's a former counselor, Actor Toronto counselor, and Amanda Cordner plays Seven. Body So Fluorescent was turned in Queer Your Stories short film festival, Inside Out Festival winner, and then they put that in there, and that's been playing all over. And they play such an interesting, different, powerful character as well. From the couple of episodes that I saw. So just coming back to shooting during the pandemic, I'm sure people want to know what that was like, because I guess the budget changes for it, and the PPE is not cheap. How did that go? And there's a certain closeness with the characters. How did you handle that?
I mean, we were working with Sienna Films, who I think took it very seriously. And so much of our pre-production was getting updates from the line producer, Jessica Daniel, about what's changed now and what we can do or can't do, or the numbers shifting in terms of how many people can be in a venue or not. And yeah, I think it was, I can speak from my experience. I was on set almost every day for many hours a day, and doing multiple scenes and with different people, and I always felt safe. And I think that's because we had, from the top down, it really mattered that people felt safe so that they could be creative and free. And we had an entire COVID department, making sure that masks were on properly and things were being sanitized. And I mean, I also, that for me, it's so interesting. I don't know the TV world, working in the TV world outside of the pandemic. So this was my first experience. And to me, it's like, I guess this is this right now, I don't know another reality. And so
This is how it's always done, by the way.
right. Yeah. Like maybe it
I
should be.
never understood the masks before.
Yeah, I just thought that it was, I really felt safe. And I think that was the most important part. And in talking with a lot of the other actors and crew members too, there was no cutting corners or anything. I think it was really about making sure we're doing this right so that we don't end up in a situation where we have to pause or delay. And we never did. We never had a single case of COVID on our set when we were working.
And you did it. You shot pretty fast, didn't you?
Yeah, what was it?
I'm going to back up what Bilal said about, like, really Sienna should be commended for, it was one of the first productions that went. There were no rules for it. They were inventing things as they were going. The numbers were going crazy while we were shooting. We didn't know what was going to happen. Yes, your budget then starts to disappear, and they are doing stuff that we probably don't even know they did to make it work, and trying to keep the creative at least as unaffected as possible. Mm-hmm. We shot it in 40 days. I can just say from my end, like, just as a director, what really does change is the difference between this is what I want and what do I get to have. Mm-hmm. And mostly my career has been, what do I get to have anyway, So I think in the same way that Bilal's, this was their first experience as an actor, this was my first time helming a larger budget show. And to me, it was still like, no, this is fine. I can work with this, this is great, as opposed to me feeling like we were cutting corners. But having said that, I was very conscious of, like, okay, what do we have today? How many extras? How many background do we have? How many, do we still have our location? It was very tricky in terms of that. And then the experience of directing the actors was really kind of fascinating, because rehearsal was all done in masks. Mm-hmm. So I never really saw the scene until action, and it was thrilling. It added a kind of pressure to what we were doing that I think really comes out, and it was really like a way for me to also trust the actors in a way that I think I may not have before. I may have tried to micromanage performances more or whatever, I don't know, but like, it was really like, and it showed how vulnerable really the actor is. Mm-hmm. Because out of everybody, when the cameras were rolling, then they put themselves into literal physical danger to do this scene. Mm-hmm. And it was beautiful. And I feel honored that I got to be a part of, guiding that.
So Bilal, what was it like for you when you were wearing so many hats? I know that in the theater we often do that. In the theater, we're often creating our own work, or having to play double duty on things. But for this, it's your first time essentially helming a show, and you're also the lead and in almost every scene. So, what was it like for you having to do all those tasks and take off your mask eventually?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I feel so fortunate for is having, again, the core team. There were lots of people who were involved that really made this experience so manageable. But I think between myself, Fab, Jennifer Quadra, and Laura Perlmutter from Sienna, that having those three around for when um I needed to shift focus and not be wearing as many hats. Like, I had people that I could really count on, and would still, always felt like there was a check-in with me about making sure that everything still felt right and okay and true. And I really did appreciate that. And it was a lot of work, honestly. I think I slept for like a month after filming wrapped. I distinctly recall an experience towards the end of the shooting where I had to crawl out of my van. Like, I could not get up off my seat and open my door and step out. I had to just to paint the picture of the level of exhaustion. But I look back at it, and it wasn't painful, because I think there was a lot of support and a lot of constant communication. And then I had a wonderful assistant who really helped me, made sure I was on top of things, knew what I was kind of doing next. And again, just so it kind of comes back for a to team for me, like a solid team that I felt like I could really rely on.
And there's also this responsibility, I think, when we're queer performers who are out there, are giving ourselves to our work, to be inclusive. What was that like for you, for both of you, when you're in your was there a diversity within the crew? Was there a lot of diversity within the cast and BG? How did you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a shared value, again, between the core kind of producing team. Like, it was important that in telling this story, we reflect what Toronto really looks like in the characters, as well as in the background, as well as in the writer's room and in the crew. And so, I mean, that's great when you all can agree on something. And then I think we did really work together to make sure we were doing what we set out to do. And I mean, I know that, again, given the timing of it all, there were there are things that I hope, if we get a second season, we can do a little bit differently, in terms of, I think, with crew especially. I think we had a lovely crew, and was pretty diverse for sure, but I think there's more to do there. I think there's more, especially in apprenticeship kind of positions, and we really invite some new folks in to be a part of that kind of culture of work that we had going. That would just feel really right. But yes, I think in terms of casting, the open casting call we did to include trans and non-binary folks, we saw people from all over Canada and cast a whole bunch of them in various different parts, and had a whole cohort of background performers who are all essentially trans and non-binary too. So yeah, I think it was all possible because we all agreed on how important it was. And then it was just about really putting in the work, which I think, again, we did, and we were committed to it. I don't want to erase anybody's work in the past, but I feel like I hadn't seen a casting call like that was open for a show like this. And so if it meant kind of coloring outside the box a little bit, we did that too. And that's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. Well, being the first out queer president of ACTRA Toronto, I'm been saying for years now, you can't be what you can't see. So giving an opportunity to be there in front of the camera, and to have the people who are surrounding you also be genuine is very helpful for people who are going to be watching this, who are 10 and 8 and want to be performers, and or want to have a place in even society, and understand that you can be this, because we've seen it, because you're paving the way for that. Does it feel like a responsibility for you because of that?
Well, I mean, in my previous life, which is still my life, I have to stop kind of pretending that my life split in half or something before the TV show. I did a lot of community work and working with nonprofits and advocacy stuff around particularly BIPOC and newcomer children and trans women of color. And so I don't know, for the last couple of years, it was like all I was talking about anyways was how to bring people into creative programming and making sure this space feels like something that they could actually thrive in. And so, okay, but it's about responsibility. I mean, yes, but I've been feeling that responsibility for a number of years now, and it just kind of transitioned into same things kind of in community nonprofit world, just on a larger scale for TV. So I didn't feel weighed down by that responsibility. I just feel like it, as a human being on this earth, maybe it's a responsibility we all have to make sure we're including as many people as we can, and really seeing them when we do include them.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you both this question. What does your family feel about this? Have they seen anything about it yet? I mean, sure, they've seen press and stuff. Have you seen advanced screenings, or are you waiting? Like, what's your feeling with your families? Fab, have you had to do some explaining?
Oh, no, not at all. My career has been so wild already that they're just expecting. They don't know what to expect next. I think it's really wonderful. My son particularly was beside me when I was cutting a lot of the show, and we were cutting the show, but I say I because it was just me in my room and Asher beside me, and and conversations that we had about what it meant to be non-binary and trans, and he's 11 at the time, right? And how is nonplussed the word, or does that means, yeah, he was like totally like not, he was like, oh, so it was just beautiful to be able to bring that into our lives, and then think about, just see, kind of like just bring that into his life. So part of his like formative kind of upbringing has that in it, and that to me was incredible. We had this one sort of moment where I realized where people who are younger, a different generation, are, because it was just really choosing an iPhone case. It was this tiny little thing. We'd started doing the show, and I liked this iPhone case that was flowery, right? And in my cis brain that grew up when I grew up, I thought, well, that's a little girly, and then I had the thought, so I checked it with Asher, and I go, hey, what do you think of this iPhone case for my phone? And Asher looked at it, he goes, it's nice. And that was it. And it had none of the stuff that I would have had at that age, going, oh no, it's it's pink or whatever, like, so it's really that's just a tiny thing, but like that's what the show kind of brought to my immediate family's life.
And Bilal, what about, how much of the story is based on your own experience with your family?
Again, it's pretty well. How would I would say it's like kind of loosely inspired again. The sister character, Aksa, was once, really kind of. I have a really close relationship with my brother, and just thought it'd be so fun to kind of get his kind of his like life texture into the show, which we kind of do, you know, in terms of where the sister works and her kind of, she's quite fast, you know, in her life. And that's how I see my brothers. But then again, when you're writing in the room and then the actor actually comes in, there's so much kind of transforms, and then similarly for the mother character too. So yeah, I think it again started from this place of like suggestions from my life, particularly for the sister character and the mother character, and then the writers and then the actors really took it to places that really made sense for them, which also worked in our world. Like I kind of really loved you know, knowing where the character started and who they became. It's a fun experience to have as a co-creator on the show.
See what the performers are bringing to the story and how they can, you know, bring their own life experience into it and translate that into the camera. That's really cool to watch for sure. So tell me the HBO Max story. I mean, that's a big story. I mean, when you know, when a Canadian show gets picked up by HBO Max, how did that happen?
It actually starts with Bilal and I turning down an opportunity to write the pilot. So we had this. Jennifer said from Sienna had said, "I love this idea. Do you both want money to write the pilot?" And then there was this option to do a sizzle reel.
Mm-hmm.
And we both made the decision to go, okay, we're not going to take the money. We're going to put it back into the sizzle, and we're going to make a sizzle reel. So this 4 minutes, we wrote probably 15-page script that ended up being a 4-minute sizzle. And it was a great thing to do. It was really smart that Jennifer had suggested it for a bunch of reasons. We really felt what the tone of the show was. And Bilal was on camera really for the second time in their whole career, you know. And so we were just feeling a bunch of stuff out, and it just really worked. The sizzle was it just had a kind of thing to it. You know, every once in a while you get to be a part of something that has a kind of magic that you don't know. And we really loved it. And so it started to open doors. And so, you know, I mean, the short of it really is like we pitched it around. It wasn't like we walked in the door and people were like, we want it. You know, it was, we pitched it to a couple of places, and there was definitely some interest. And then HBO Max came on board when we were in the writing stage, and really showed us that commitment. And yeah, so like right from the get-go, the writing room, we were getting notes from 2 different networks.
How was that?
And how was that?
Yeah, how was that?
I mean, look at how we answer these questions. We just pass.
I can see that people are saying, "Is this going to be broadcast?"
You know, my experience of receiving notes from both those networks was, you know, I think what was really special was people were interested in you know, not turning the show into something that it never could have been or should have been or whatever. Like, you know, there was always a real truth in their notes. Like they were responding to what they were seeing and what they wanted to see more of, or how we could kind of adapt something to kind of align all our visions. And so, I mean, I was surprised because I was nervous. It felt like, you know, in theater land, anytime I work with a dramaturge, it just felt like the kind of institutionalized epic version of that. And again, with a story that's so particular, I just wasn't sure what the nature of the notes were going to be, but it always felt like they were so interested in making sure that we protect the story, and then Fab and I always had each other to bounce off of too. Like, what are the notes that are resonating for us, or do we have any questions? And I felt like we were in conversation with both CBC and HBO Max all the way throughout the writing stage too. So yeah, the only time that I the thing that I kept wanting to bring was to make sure that we don't sacrifice anything that could mean a lot for queer and trans communities or South Asian communities if for whatever reason the networks don't see that, and so that felt something to protect, but again wasn't something that I felt like I was fighting for or was something that was creating arguments. It was just a point of view that I wanted to keep bringing in anytime we were engaging with the notes.
That's
yeah,
great.
they were really supportive in that respect,
Yeah.
for sure. And I think I have to give them credit because when you take a leap of faith based on a 4-minute sizzle reel, it becomes something other than the 4-minute sizzle reel, right? And then you have to sort of internalize that and see where the creative, because what we delivered seemed really finished and done. And so we hadn't gone through this whole process of really defining this show, and they were very supportive. And even though I feel it's very close to what we delivered, they really gave us the support that we needed to get there.
You both were tremendously politic in those answers. Really, that was just fantastic to hear. So what's your hope for? Certainly, another season would be great. Do you have places already that you have in mind that you want to take it to? You don't have to, give any secrets away, but is there a way you want to expand it? What's your feeling for that season 2? Or is it still too early?
I mean, I don't know what to say beyond yes. Like, yes, we want to expand it, and our hope is that, of course, we continue to spend more time with Subby and the people in Subby's life. Like, yeah, I feel like I wouldn't know. I got to stop talking because this answer sucks. So.
No. I think maybe it was the question that sucks because it's a little early. Maybe jumping the gun here to be asking you that question. So I really appreciate the time that you've given us to be here and to talk about your show. And I can hardly wait for everyone to be able to see it. And when is it going to be on HBO Max? I know it's CBC.
November 7th?
Uh-huh.
That's the date I have in my head. I'm not entirely sure, but it's around then.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for being here and for giving.
Yeah, thank you, David. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you for all your work. Like, I've been close enough to ACTRA to know. No, I'm not being politic. Like, what you all do is just so. I'm always moved every time I'm invited to some event that I didn't know about, or when someone is in distress, or one of our members. When something happens in our community where we all need to come together, and I have these moments in my life that are really memorable. That it was ACTRA that was there for that. So and you're always there. You've always been at all those things. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. And I look forward to meeting you in person, Bilal, and Fab too. It's been a while since we had a good hug. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, David.
Look, I'm touching my heart. I'm serious. I'm touching my heart.
I can't. I hate to break it to Bilal, but that's not what they mean in France when they touch their heart.
It means, where's the next croissant? Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.